A lot of times UI and UX are used interchangeably, and it's not the same thing. Of course, there's a spelling difference, but more than that also, there's a vast difference between what UI, which is user interface, and UX, which is user experience. What does it mean? As a product manager, I have dealt with designing a lot of times, and fortunately, I've had the opportunity to work with some really awesome designers. So it has helped me understand the entire design thinking methodology and given me some insights into how to become a great designer. Previously, when I had started my career, most of the times a product owner or a manager would go ahead and create the wireframes. But over a period of time, I have had the privilege of understanding the exact method, and I can today enlighten you about what is the difference between a UI, which is a user interactive designer, and UX, which is a user experience designer. User experience deals with the entire human experience in a product. A product can be something that's physical or it can be non-physical. In modern times, most of the times we talk about digital products. So say for example, an Apple Watch. When you buy a new Apple Watch, what is the experience that you have when you unbox it? In a physical world, let's look at an example. Starbucks is one of the most talked about examples when it comes to giving awesome experiences. Why does that happen? When you go walk into a Starbucks store, they call you out and they welcome you. They ask you your name. So there's some sort of personalization. And then you have your coffee or you take it to go and then you enjoy it by sipping it and just enjoying your drive or whatever you're doing. Right? So that entire experience is called as the customer experience or the user experience. It's a common myth that UI and UX designers do the same thing. No, they do not. So let's understand what is it that a UI designer does versus a UX designer. I would love to look at an example while I'm explaining this. So imagine your product to be the entire human body. The bones are what you call as the UX, and the elements on top of it, which is your touch and feel, your skin, your flesh, everything around it is your UI. So essentially, the UX, which is the UX designer, he's the one who decides on what bones need to be where. And the UI designer is the one who adds on to the elements to make it alive and to make sure that you can actually go through the entire journey, and he's the one who navigates you through the entire journey. Let's look at an example. Imagine Amazon.com. When you go on Amazon to search for a particular product, and if you're able to find it in the top searches or the top 5 searches with the best review ranking, and if it is in your budget, you will definitely add it to cart, or you will click on the buy now option and then you will complete your payment process. That was easy, right? But in order to do that, you had to have the feasibility of clicking on different buttons. So this entire activity gets divided into 2 different parts, which 2 different designers take care of for you. The first is the UI designer. The UI designer is somebody who designs what you see on a particular page, which is the buy now button or the add to cart button, or just the colors around it, the typography on it. All these things are decided by the UI designer, versus the UX designer is somebody who will go ahead and navigate you through the entire process. He's the one who knows what is it that the customer is looking for. He understands and empathizes with the user or the customer very closely to make sure that the actual results that you will be liking will come up first on that particular page. UX or user experience is an ongoing activity all the time, because you try to understand the user persona, what is it that they like, what is it that they don't like, and you align that with the business strategy, and you see what is the market doing, what is the competition like. So it's a collaboration, or it is an intersection between different things such as user personas, business strategy, and the overall experience of what you want to have for the customer. The main factors that affect UX are the product goals, the business goals, market analysis, and the user analysis. So how does a UX designer go ahead and get information around all of these things? Typically, a UX designer is somebody who will go ahead and conduct interviews, or they will use different methods of knowing where the big data is, analyze it, and then come up with their hypothesis to validate it with certain sets of customers. So you must have heard of something called as A/B testing. Most of the times, designers, they will release their prototypes into something called as A/B testing. So it is tested with a certain set of customers, and then you validate the hypothesis, and then you release it for the market. Once the UX designer understands the customer really well, they will go ahead and analyze the results that they've received through these tests. And then they will put that in line with the hypothesis which you had thought of earlier. However, while doing this, he needs to make sure that it is in line with the product strategy. What is it that the product manager wants him to do in this particular feature or product? And it is benefiting the business goals as well. Once the UX designer has understood all of these things, he will create wireframes. Wireframes is nothing but a sketch of what the actual screens will look like. And once it is approved, he will go ahead and create prototypes around it. If you are interested in becoming a UX designer, some of the key skills that you need to have is understanding human behavior, understanding psychology, understanding how a product will intersect with the minds of the customer. So essentially understanding the cognitions and building that into an actual functionality which will be on an app or a website. Now let's understand what a UI designer does. A UI designer basically brings life to what the UX designer has thought. It typically comes once the prototypes are done, and he's the one who decides what's the mood boarding. Mood boarding basically means as a company you will select certain colors for your main screen or your secondary screen, your logged in versus your non-logged in session. And that is what the UI designer will give you as options to select from. The UI and UX designers, they both typically work with the product manager. UI typically is a visually interactive design. It determines how does a customer go from one screen to another. How does he scroll down to view the information? Is the information on left side of the page or the right side of the page? What is the ease that you're providing the customer to go ahead and consume what you're providing? And how are you helping him navigate into the entire user journey? If you are a UI designer, you would be somebody who is responsible for selecting the colors on that particular page, understanding the typography, what are the types of fonts that you need to select, how does a button look like, do you want to go for a flat design versus a non-flat design, how will the responsiveness of the page look like, and how will it affect the data that is shown to the customer. When a UI designer is designing, he typically looks at things like what is the layout of the page? What is the spacing that needs to be there? Is it in line with the mood board that you had decided earlier or not? The UI designer is somebody who pays more attention to detail, and he's somebody who brings life to what was decided earlier. So he's somebody who will be actually designing the screens, creating the high fidelity frameworks for you, and he's essentially somebody who's like the painter in the entire process. So it's a combination of a good UI and UX designer who will give you the entire user journey and an awesome experience, along with bringing some life to what you're creating into a product. Thank you for watching the video, guys, and please subscribe to my channel so you are always updated and I'm always motivated to create great content.